Welcome to Brewsers, the podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I am your host, Rody John, and today we talk to Lauren Sears about her early days of jiu-jitsu, being a physical therapist, and how she competes at a high level at over 30. This is such a fun conversation that her and I have. We get really deep on certain things, and she shares absolutely amazing stories. So I can't wait for y'all to hear this interview. So, without further ado, we'll get to it. But first, make sure to go sign up for our newsletter. You can find out even more about Lauren, what's going on with her life, what's going on with your favorite podcast. It's all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers, and so much more. So make sure to go sign up for our newsletter. The link is in the show notes, and it is also on our social media. So definitely make sure to go sign up for that. So without further ado, here is Lauren Sears. I would like to welcome to the show Lauren Sears. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a nice cloudy day up here in North Texas. How is it down there in South Texas?
Pretty much the same. I'm actually sitting outside right now, so the weather's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's that time of year in Texas where it is still really nice and you can go outside and not sweat everything off. But this time next month, it'll be either really rain or really hot. So it's always interesting.
Yeah.
So what is your earliest memory of martial arts?
My earliest memory, honestly, it was before I ever really even started. I took a boxing class several years ago. I think I was like 19 years old, and I wanted to get into it. I loved it, but I was pretty poor at the time, so I wasn't able to afford actually starting. And I was a runner at the time. I've always been some sort of athlete. I swam from the age of 5 to 9, and ran track in high school. And so outside of high school, I was running marathons and had gotten into triathlon. And so it was around the same time that I had tried that boxing class and I loved it, but running is a lot cheaper because all you need is shoes in the outdoors. So I continued doing my endurance sports for a while, and then a couple years after, I was competing in triathlon professionally for a little while, and in, I think it was 2012, I started taking some self-defense classes just because I wanted to learn how to defend myself. And it just kind of exploded from there. I had injured myself, so I wasn't able, I had injured my ankle pretty bad, and so I wasn't able to compete in triathlon for a while, so I kind of put my focus into martial arts and just learning how to defend myself. And then I just fell in love with it, and started getting involved in the sports side of things, Muay Thai and MMA, and later down the road tried out jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I'd heard that you were wanting to be an MMA fighter, and you were going to just, learn your craft and hone your craft with each skill. And I believe you said you were going to only do jiu-jitsu for a year, and here you are how many years later?
Yeah, that's right. I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for 6 years.
Wow.
But yeah, I had wanted to fight in MMA, and I remember I had 4 or 5 years of stand-up under my belt, and I had no experience with groundwork. And so I told myself, I needed to develop my skill set in that area if I was, going to be successful in MMA. And, I never fought in MMA because I had multiple fights lined up and the girls would drop out. And so I never actually fought in MMA, but, that was the whole goal. And so I dedicated, when I realized, I was all right, I need to focus on, the ground fighting side of my skills. I decided I was going to commit an entire year because I had so many years of like stand up already. So I I tried it out. I actually signed up for my first competition before I ever like went and took a class because I knew that I was like, I had been telling myself for months that I was going to do it, and I kept putting it off and kept putting it off. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sign my ass up for a competition, and that'll get myself into the gym to get ready for it. And I still procrastinated and put it off. And I had like 2 weeks of training before I competed. So it did finally get me into it, but once I started in jiu-jitsu, I fell in love with it, and I was drawn to it more than I was with striking. It just seemed like I was naturally better at it. I loved the community. It seemed like, to me, like it was a deeper, more complex, more intellectual, like obviously all of those things are like a part of striking as well. It just seemed like, you know, it's a more complicated puzzle, than like, you know, the striking side of things, at least to me it was.
Right. No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, they do say boxing is a sweet science, but you're also only using, for the most part, the top half of your body as opposed to using your entire body when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. So I can understand what you're saying.
Well, and it's like with striking, it's targets, right? You're trying to hit something. Right. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you're trying to manipulate something. Like, and you're using all of your body in multiple different, like, ways, however you can configure the body, right? And that can happen in multitude of different ways. So, yeah, it was just something that, really pulled me in, and I fell in love with it. And, you know, that's what I do now. And that's like my whole, I guess like purpose and goal for life is to just continue doing this the rest of my life and help other people do it and, have my own school one day.
Yeah, I read that you said you wanted to do that, and I think that's awesome. I think there needs to be more jiu-jitsu places for people, especially of all ages, to, you know, again, just test yourself. And with martial arts in general, yes, it's good for your physical conditioning when it comes to, you know, doing anything physical is good for you, even if you're going outside for a walk for a while. But this one, like we've been talking about, is not only a physical thing, but it's a mental thing as well. And it really it'll humble you, because I remember, so I've only taken one jiu-jitsu class just because I couldn't continue with as much as they wanted me to do for the free trial. And then with the price range, and like you said, being broke, I was like, maybe not right now. Maybe I'll come back to this. But I remember one of the guys saying, just embrace the suck, which I've heard it over and over because, you know, I like to listen to the Joe Rogan show, and he loves talking about jiu-jitsu also.
Yep.
And it's about, yeah, you might be in a certain hold or position that you don't want to be in, but that doesn't mean you're going to stay in that position. You have to you have to think about, okay, what can I do? Where their body? Where do I feel like they're maybe using, you know, muscles that are probably about to tire out to where I can get out and stuff, and that kind of stuff. How do you, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, how long did it take you to fully, I guess, feel comfortable is the phrase I guess I would use?
Man, comfortability is something that I don't know if you'll ever fully get in a martial arts sport. You know, you're always going to be in uncomfortable positions. You're always going to be in scenarios where it doesn't feel good. But I think that that's one of the things that I love about it, is that you're constantly pushing yourself and developing like your skill set in dealing with these uncomfortable scenarios and learning how to persevere and problem solve in high stress environments. And like you were saying about like the mentality side of things, like that's one of the reasons I love it so much. It's like it is a valuable skill set physically, right? Like for real life. Because, you know, if you end up in some sort of scenario in real life, at least you have some skill set to defend yourself physically, right? But the mental side of things is huge. Like there's so much of jujitsu that translates to real life and helps develop the psyche and just like your understanding of yourself and how to deal with like stressful situations and how to manage like triggers, how to manage like and calm your nervous system in scenarios that are outside of the gym. So being in the gym in these high stress environments under pressure, you know, you're training your body and your mind to be able to handle these scenarios when they arise in other parts of your life as well. And
Right.
you know, outside of that, it's just, you know, there's so many ways in which it's for me personally, and I hear the same thing from almost everybody that I talk to that's been in it, that it's just this therapeutic activity, you know, like it's healing in a lot of ways. It really shows you a lot about yourself, about who you are, and teaches you about you know, the demons that are in your head and how to conquer them, really.
I mean, you're right, especially there's being more focus on mental health, and I think that's very important. I think it's been long overlooked. And what you just said about, you know, facing the demons inside your mind, I think a lot of people are afraid to do that, and so maybe that's why they don't challenge themselves or why they don't do some kind of martial art or something to where, you know, a lot of people don't want to be, or, you know, day oneers again. So they're like, okay, well, I'm comfortable doing this. I'm just going to keep doing this because I know this. Why would I go and start learning something new? You know, especially when people get older, they think, oh, I'm almost 30 or, oh, I'm almost 40, or they just lump into whatever the next thing is, even if they're in the early parts of whatever decade they're in now. They just unfortunately have that mindset of, okay, well, I'm too old. I can't do this anymore. Or I can't learn something new that you can't teach a dog new tricks, which is not true. I've taught my old dog many tricks. So I think it's just a mental thing that people need to learn to break down and just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. It's the furthest thing from the truth as far as like being too old, you know. I've heard so many stories and I've met so many people that started very late in life. Like there's a woman online called the Jiu-Jitsu Grandma, and she started at 60 years old, and she's like now like a Masters world champion. They have like competitive divisions for those age groups. So if it weren't possible for you to start and be competing like later in life, they wouldn't have that, right? So like it's incredible. Like her, and then there was another woman that was like 7 years old when she started, and she's like she's a ref for IBJJF now, and like she has a career in jiu-jitsu. Those stories are pretty amazing to me. I love to hear that kind of stuff because, like you said, there's so many people in the world that they place barriers on themselves, and they just these self-limiting beliefs that like they're too old or too this or too that or don't have the time, whatever it may be. And hold back on like, you know, doing something that they want to do or doing something that's going to like, you know, better their life and themselves in the long run.
Yeah. I read that you said that self-limiting beliefs and fear of failure are the number one killer of dreams, which I love. As soon as I read that, I was like, I have to ask her about that. And what do you feel like are small things people can do daily, weekly, monthly to kind of break through all of that?
Man, I try and tell people that if something is scary to you, if you're doubting yourself, that's usually an indicator that it's something that you should do. And like just stepping out and taking action and doing it, trying to not like overthink things, trying to like kind of cut yourself off before you even let yourself go down that rabbit hole. It's kind of like trying to eat healthy, right? Like if you give yourself the option, if there's like, you know, a cookie